had a communication breakdown or a relationship meltdown that totally took you out of the game in your business or career, you're going to love today's podcast because we're going to dig into the power of communication and really understanding the nuances of relationships and how to get more power out of your business, out of your results, and be able to have a higher level trajectory by just understanding some simple things about communication. Hi, it's Melanie Benson Strick here. I'm America's leading small business optimizer, and this weekly podcast is all about learning the little things that are going to help you optimize your results, your marketing, your communication, like today, everything that goes into running a healthy, profitable business. And sometimes it's the little things that make the biggest difference. As the old saying goes, small hinges swing big doors. Now, my guest today is someone that everybody's been raving about and saying, you've got to have Michelle on the show. You've got to have Michelle on the show. So let me tell you a little bit about Michelle, and then we'll get into the questions for today. So Michelle Lederman is the author of The 11 Laws of Likability. That title alone makes me want to read the book right now. And another book that she's put out, Heroes Get Hired. Her company, Executive Essentials, is a training company that provides communications and leadership programs as well as executive coaching services. And here's what really got me. There's little things that stick out for me about people. And what I love the most about her background and what I've learned about her so far is that Michelle believes real relationships lead to real results. And I'll just go back in time a little bit to my corporate days and then, what I had to learn about being a business owner. I don't think I ever really understood the value of relationships and the depth to which relationships bring power, not just to your business results, but to who you're being in the industry, who you're being as an authority, as an expert, until I understood what it took to really cultivate, nurture, and develop real relationships. So I'm so glad, Michelle, that you're here today to talk about this with me.
I'm so happy to be here, and I was very curious what you were going to say when you said, "This is the thing that got me."
You're like, what was it? Yeah, I've built my business on relationships, and I take my relationships and my credibility, if you will, my image very important. It's important to me, and I think relationships are
Of
such a big
course.
part of that. So I'm really curious, how did you get started in this line of work?
It's a funny story. I'm actually a recovering CPA. Uh,
Ah,
I spent 10 years in finance and on a trading floor and doing auditing and mergers and acquisitions, and I did all that heavy finance stuff. And I was working for a bank at the time, and my boss, the treasurer, got promoted to be the CEO of a Tokyo branch. I went with him, and I hired a coach to teach all the traders and bankers in Tokyo how to report to a New York CEO. And at the end of the week, I went to the CEO and I said, I can do this. This is what I'm meant to do. And he said, okay. He goes, you still have to do my budgets and you still have to do my hedge fund investing, but okay. And he put faith in me and he got me trained. And I was able to start bridging the gap between finance and the trading world of communications.
yes, so you had a firsthand experience of what a coach can do to a business and the performance, and you just got hooked?
I did everything she did and then some, and I felt that this was really my purpose. And it's very interesting when we think about what we bring to the table. I'm really good with numbers. I was a pretty good person in finance, but that wasn't my passion, that wasn't my drive, that wasn't my mission. And
Yeah.
I found mission in what I do now.
I call those your genius factors. When you free yourself from all the other stuff that takes you away from living in your genius and being able to use that in your work, it's almost like work starts to feel effortless, right?
I will not go as far as effortless.
Okay. Well, I,
but
I can relate to that.
but but it's hard for me to differentiate between, who I am and what's important to me and what I do.
Got it. It's funny. I haven't told very many people this over the years, but it was actually a Stephen Covey coach that had come into our organization that got me into coaching. So I think, being exposed to what's possible sometimes can be a really great catalyst.
Yes.
So you're known as a leadership and communications expert. Let's talk about the kind of clients you work with and what is it that you do? Like what is the problem that they bring you in to solve inside their organization?
It's a great question. And I always say it's my mission in this world to help people, individuals, organizations communicate with confidence, clarity, and connection.
Mm.
And you can do that in a lot of different ways. So I've worked with nonprofits, universities, Fortune 500s, financial services, media and entertainment, pharmaceutical, I mean, you name it, the industry or the type of company. And I've worked with high school all the way up through CEO. Because the truth of the matter is, every single interaction, the foundation is communications. And our success, the foundation is relationships. So the challenges aren't any different depending on where we are in our lives. But to answer your question of what do they come and say, solve this for me, it could be a productivity issue.
Hmm.
Right now, I've got a client that grew very quickly, 3 times the size in 1 year, and they're having cultural and collaboration issues. So, how do we play nice in the sandbox issues? I've had teams bring me in because there was a lot of siloed communication and they weren't really cross communicating, cross selling, cross building the team. Uh, I mean, it's everything from conflict resolution to I'm stuck. I'm a superstar in this organization, but there's one thing that's holding me back, and I need help with that one thing.
Got
Sometimes
it.
it's sometimes that's also presence.
Oh, presence. Say more about that.
Well, I'll hear things from clients that are bringing me into the organization for a high potential individual, and they'll say, he's got a great message but doesn't know how to deliver it.
Mm.
Or he's brilliant and everyone thinks he's slow. Or people aren't taking him seriously. His message is getting lost in translation. Or he just needs a little more oomph. I get that a lot. They don't exactly know how to explain it, but it's
It's like
you
missing
know
some power.
he's missing some power. And I've come in, and they interview you, and you have to find that right click with a coach. And I think it's
Hmm.
a key ingredient to an effective coaching relationship. And I am who I am, and I put myself out there, and the guy's sitting in front of me like this. And I got out of my chair, go across behind his desk, and I started just playing with his shoulders, saying, "Do you feel this?" And then I got back to my seat. And I'm like, "Was that okay?" I didn't really ask permission. I'm just like, "This is making me crazy."
Exactly.
He hired me within 3 hours of my meeting, and it was an hour and a half to drive home. So it pretty much called me right away.
So you primarily work with people inside corporations then, or do you have other types of clients that come in that need this kind of help?
I do. Mainly I do work with the organizations, but since the book has come out, I've had a lot of individuals reach out to me, which has been so fulfilling to
Hmm.
really touch it from the front line, so to speak. And so now I am working with a few more what I call retail clients, helping them in their transitions, in their growth, and it's been fun.
Yeah. So, all right. So you've got somebody in an organization that needs some oomph. They're
Mm.
missing a little power, and they bring you in. Like, what do you think are a couple of keys that, let's say, anybody who's feeling like they're not as powerful, not as confident, not as courageous as they need to be to really get their
Yeah.
message out there in the world? Because you're talking to an audience of people right now who are messengers of some kind. They're
Yes.
experts, they're speakers, they're authors. They've got something that they know they're an authority in that they want other people to get out there. But here's let's take a step back for a minute, Michelle. There are the people who naturally emanate this power. And
Yes.
then there's the people who they've got this thing, but try as hard as they do, they can't find that right connection, that right energy to get people on board with their mission. Like, let's give them a couple of ideas of how to
Okay.
start pulling that energy up.
I love that you use the word energy because that's the fourth law in my book.
Oh, okay.
The law of energy. And energy is contagious. And the first thing, as you were speaking about these people who have this better thing and they believe it and they know it, that is really the place we need to start. And I would question them to question themselves as to where are you worried? Where do you think you're the fraud? Or where do you think the product might not be as good? Because if you feel it, if you think it, you're bringing it to the meeting and you're bringing it to your energy into the table. And so you have to believe you before you can convince anybody else.
Yeah.
That's the first place I would start. We can do a lot of things around our voice and we can do a lot of things around our body. So I'll give you one on each. In the body, one of the things that you want to think about, whether you're on the phone, whether you're in person, is your body position and the energy you're keeping in your body. I kind of want to take off my jacket right now and I want to show you something because there's a difference between sitting here and I'm sitting upright and sitting here like this.
Right.
And even though you only see a little bit top of my body, there's a difference in the energy.
Okay, I'm
Now,
gonna do it too. Yep, I
okay.
notice a total difference.
So what I tell people is to extend their spine. I don't want you to sit stiffly because I
Hmm.
still want you to use your hands and gesture, and you'll
Right.
see my hands flying in and out of your screen. Whether you're on the phone or not, I want you to pick up the phone with a smile. And I actually usually use my speakerphone. I put it right in front of my mouth so they can hear me. And I'm gesturing like crazy all in front of it because it keeps your energy in you. So think about using your body to help convey your message, your passion, and your energy around that belief and that conviction.
So you like talking with your hands?
I do. I'll try to keep them a little less in front of my face.
Well, in video, it just makes it really fun because there's like little tracers all over the screen, but it's okay. I love the
Okay, lower
enthusiasm.
down.
But okay, so this is interesting. So let's talk about translating that to the stage. First of all, let me just anchor what you said. You were talking about posture. And like most of us are sitting like this, just the small nuance of really like engaging your spine. And
Yes.
then you were talking about using enthusiasm and using, energy to flow through. Is there anything else before I go a little into the question I had?
So that's the body side. I wanted to give you one tip on the voice side.
Okay.
We have a lot of vocal tools at our disposal. We have our pitch, we have our pause, we have our volume, we have our animation. I want you to pick something that you do naturally. You can't force something that doesn't come to you. For me, I use a lot of animation. And here's how I do it. I want you to think about the words you're saying and think of if they were written on a piece of paper, how would you format them? What would be bolded? What would be underlined? Where would the white space be? What would be italicized or put in quotes? And really think about how do you then speak that format? Where's the capital letters and and it will have more power, more impact because you've thought about what you want to emphasize and what's important.
Love this tip. And you know why? Because whether you speak live or you're giving talks or you're training or whatever, or you're doing stuff virtually and people can't see you, when you learn to change the tonality and the intonation, like you said, find your capital letters and have a
Yeah.
little energy and vibration in there, people experience you differently. And oh my gosh, there's a couple of really big names in my industry that are so monotone and I literally go to sleep. It drives me crazy. So it makes a big difference. And I think
Yeah.
it helps people take you more seriously and you're creating that engagement that you need.
And sometimes, there are people whose voices are naturally very small in their range. They
Hmm.
don't fluctuate much. And
Yeah.
it becomes very melodic and, as you said, hypnotic.
Hmm.
So they need to use a different tool. They're not going to start having pitch and have all that variation, but they might change the pace up just a bit. And then they'll talk really fast, and then they'll slow it down. So they find other ways that are more
Hmm.
natural to them to create interest vocally.
Love it. So that's in your book, The 11 Laws?
That stuff might not be.
Okay.
That
we,
stuff
we
I may
went
have
out of
been
the box.
contributing.
We got
There might
secret
be
sauce here.
there might be a few things in the energy chapter. I certainly talk about smiling and some eye
Hmm.
contact. There are definitely things in the law of perception and how others receive you that I can give you some tips in there as well.
Great, I love it. So this is all great, and as we know, all of this is going to influence your relationships too.
Yes.
Relationship, and I'll just share that the relationships that I've developed over the years, they've made me hundreds of thousands of dollars, and there are people who naturally are good at relationships, and then there are people who really struggle. It's like not their most innate talent to nurture and develop those. Do you notice anything significant in terms of maybe a characteristic or a skill that someone has that makes them better at cultivating and nurturing those kind of relationships?
It's funny because as you describe those two types of talents, I think a lot of people will say, well, the extroverts are great at it and the introverts are not.
Yeah.
And I actually want to disabuse the listeners of that thinking because introverts actually have a unique skill that extroverts don't have, which is the ability to listen really effectively.
Exactly.
And as an introvert, take um, that skill. And you also have an advantage in that introverts prefer the one-on-one.
Hmm.
That's what you're trying to do is build a one-on-one. You don't have to work the room. You don't have to break into the crowd and be the center of attention. You have to learn about one person and connect with one person. And what you need to think about is it doesn't have to look a certain way, but just do it the way in which you're comfortable and that you can authentically connect with somebody. And I do talk about some of those differences within the art of the conversation portion of the book.
And I'm so glad you brought up the introverted extroverted piece because the way I learned it is introverts just go inside to recharge. And extroverts tend to, be more recharged by being around other people and they tend to be
Hmm.
more stimulated and they get a lot of value out of exchanging with other energies.
Yes.
But to me, I find that some of the most amazing relationships don't have anything to do with whether they're introvert or extrovert. It has to do with what value you place on developing a relationship. And is that something that you value or something that you haven't valued yet? So, I look at it also in the value system, in the hierarchy of what are you making important. Because if you see your numbers or your results are always going to come from some other type of activity, the relationships tend to fall lower in the totem pole or the activity building than they might if you really value them.
That's an interesting thought. And I think sometimes people don't attribute their results to the relationship.
Ah, okay.
I think people think that they got it because of this other reason or because they did this other thing and not
Yeah.
because they had a relationship with somebody. Maybe because they feel that that minimizes their skill or their talent or their abilities. But I want to flip the switch on that as well.
Okay.
I think all of my results have come from relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I just got a referral from somebody who I did work for 8 years ago. And when I asked how they found me, she gave me a name, and I said, I don't, it sounds vaguely familiar. She told me the bank, and I'm like, I haven't worked for that bank since I was pregnant with my second child.
Yeah.
And to be remembered that far after the fact and valued enough to give that referral, that's a relationship. Yes, it had something to do with my skill in front of the room, but we did keep in touch over the years, and I had her on a mail list. You kept in somebody's mind. So I really think that people don't give credit to the relationships.
Yeah. Well said. And by the way, you're here because of relationships that you had. And
I am.
yeah, I mean, I think it is a powerful part of the business that we develop and the industries that we live in today. So I'm glad that became part of our conversation because
Can I share the story of how
oh,
I
I
ended
would
up
love
here?
it. Yeah, please do.
Okay, so I went to high school with a man named Jason Silverman,
Yep.
and we actually dated for about 3 weeks in 10th grade, which we think is hysterical. And
Can you even
he
call
was,
it dating then?
yeah, I know, it was 10th grade. And somehow, he's probably on my list, and he responded when my newsletter went out, and we decided to get together as a foursome. And he had me on his podcast, and he said, "This was great. I got to introduce you to Jessica. She books other people." And I got on the phone with Jessica rather than just, emailing with her. I
Mm-hmm.
said, "Let's talk. Let her know who I am." And her and I are now, Facebook friends. And as a result, she's put me on like a half a dozen shows and
Yep.
wonderful, wonderful people.
Yep. It's all part of the relationship. It's great. So let's flip the scene here a little bit and talk a little bit about how you got where you are. And I just want to set precedence here by saying that as a coach, I have a huge appreciation for other coaches who have really found a way to bring their gift and their passion out and make it a successful business. Because I think last I count, I heard because I have some friends that are pretty big in the coach training and association side. I think there's something like just under 1 million people who call themselves a coach.
Ooh,
And less than 80% of them make more than $27,000 a year.
you're kidding.
No, it's
That's
really,
interesting.
it's extraordinary. Okay. Now, I should say less than 80% of them make more than $27,000 a year. I think I said that backwards before, but we got the picture.
So 20% make more or 80%?
20% make more than
Okay.
$27,000 a year. Yeah, based
Okay.
on some industry surveys. So, I'm kind of curious. I want to flip things around how I normally do. I want to find out what do you think was like a pivotal moment, a game changer for you, something that has really made it work for you. It made you be able to have a successful business that you can do what you love.
Two thoughts come to my mind.
Okay,
And they're both going to be stories about people.
of course.
One was my, of course, right? One was my old boss in my last finance job. And he was an entrepreneur. I was working in his small business. And and I told him very upfront, I was building my business on the side. I was very open about it. And he said, sometimes you need to follow the money. What you think your business is not what your business actually is.
Hmm.
And I thought it was a really interesting thing that kept me very open and very nimble as the business was growing. And I constantly had what I call a decision tree for the work that was coming in. And I would ask myself certain questions. And those questions changed over the years, before motherhood, after motherhood. And it was to evaluate the work coming in and do I want to do this and is this really related to my core mission? And the other piece of it was a woman named Jan Dams, and I'm sharing her. She has a fabulous group called Six Figures Women.
Hmm.
So for all those women out there, it's a LinkedIn group. Email Jan, tell her I sent you. I just did a talk from them a week ago. And Jan actually stalked me on LinkedIn. She admits to this. She tells me I stalked you. And I love that. And because I asked her how she found me when she invited me to join the group. So we decided to have lunch one day. And she said, well, I need to know, did you ever think that you wouldn't make it? You know, you started this business. Did you have a plan B? And I looked at her kind of a little dumbfounded, like, no, it just never occurred to me. And it was a really powerful question that has stuck with me
Hmm.
because she responded by saying, it's amazing. I'm really good at stalking the right people because she said all the people that I've met in doing this have this same, uh, passion or energy or something around them. And maybe it's confidence, but failure, it wasn't that I thought about failure being an option. I just never thought about failure. And people have asked me the failure question. And I said, the truth is, yes, I've done some things in business I probably wouldn't do again, but I don't view anything as a failure. And it's just, okay, that program didn't go well. How do I change it? How do I make it better for the next client? How do I do this? It's always a growth learning experience rather than this is the end of me.
Right.
So I think for people who are still on that brink of, is this going to happen? You're keeping one foot out of your business.
Hmm.
You need to have full faith. And no, it might not be $1 million business in year one, but you'll get there. And I think that that is something you need to believe in.
So you got to believe in what you're doing, or else you're always going to have kind of an out and let yourself off the hook, so to speak.
Yeah, I tried to let myself off the hook when I was writing the 11 Laws.
Did you?
I
Oh,
did. I
all
did.
right.
It's funny because I wrote the book, and I mean it was real close to the deadline, and I delivered it, and I didn't hear anything for like 6 months. Very frustrating. And the publisher finally came back to me probably around, I think it was Halloween. It was October 31st. The deadline was May 1st. And I got 17-page report of what was wrong with my book.
Ooh.
Yeah. And I was so distraught and so like that was my baby and I wrote every word um, and I was doing a project at Citibank at the time. I was in the city 3, 4 days a week, and they said you have 60 days to fix it. And I negotiated for 90 and ignored it for I would say 45.
No pressure or anything, right?
And within that time, I went to my husband. I said, "Can I quit?" And he said, "You can. I don't think you really can. It's not who you are." And I just looked at him and I'm like, and he was right. He knows me well enough to say, I give you permission, but I don't think you give you permission. And so I had 45 days left, and he printed it out for me at 3 p.m. on the day of the deadline and hand delivered it to my publisher before 5 p.m.
Wow.
And 2 weeks later on Valentine's Day, I got an email that said 5 pages of what was right with my book. And I was then chosen as the lead book for the publisher. So,
Congratulations.
it's interesting when there's a great saying, and the president of the White House Project, Tina Dufu, had said this to me. She said, if things are getting easier, you're probably going downhill.
Hmm.
And that helps when things are hard and things are scary, then you're on the brink of something big and keep going.
I love that. That's great. And I do believe that, sometimes the most challenging times, you're right on the edge of something really extraordinary. And you've heard the book, The 3 Feet of Gold. You're just on this side of really touching the goal. Don't give up too soon. It's pretty extraordinary. Okay, well, I love that. And I love that you were able to use those tools to keep yourself in motion. Has there ever been a really big challenge that you had to face as a entrepreneur and coach?
Um, I'm going to share a bit of a personal story here. When my older son was about a year and a half old, he entered the early intervention system, and those who are parents out there know that that means you have a child that has some special needs.
Hmm.
He, we had some extreme challenges with him, and I had only been kind of really completely on my own since maybe a few months before he was born. I was bridging the, half in finance, getting a salary still, and half building the business throughout 2005. And he was born in the beginning of 2006. So now it's the middle of 2007. I mean, it's a very infancy business. And I had a child that needed my full attention. I had 12 therapists. He had 45 hours a week of therapy. I had to be on site at his school. I mean, it was really intense. And I had to go to each of my clients and tell them what was going on and let them know that I really wasn't going to be available. But not to forget about me. When you are your business and you need to step out for really good reasons, you worry that that business is going to go away and you might
Mm-hmm.
give up on it.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I started writing the book.
Okay.
And so, what I would say to people who face a challenge within their business, what I took away from it is I made it very personal. I established relationships with each of those clients that I had at the time, let them know what was going on, that I would be there for them if there was an emergency. I would work it out, I'd figure it out, but I was going to be, really lightening my load. They were all incredibly understanding, and every single one of them that I had at that time brought me back on a year later.
That is cool. That's
Um,
great.
and in that meantime, what I did is made sure that I wasn't completely leaving the process
Mm-hmm.
and keeping my head in the game. So you still have coffee and you still have lunch, you just have it right outside the school.
Right. You just use your time differently, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thanks for sharing something personal because as a matter of fact, the guest right before this, we were talking about a personal challenge that really took her out of the game for a while and how she coped with that. And I think sometimes as business owners, especially if we're maybe newer, we don't realize that there are going to be extraordinary circumstances we have to deal with in our personal lives. And to me, that's why we have our own business, so we have more flexibility. But conversely,
Yes.
you've got to be set up to deal with those, and you have to have a strategy to move through them without losing everything you've built.
Yeah.
And I think that can be a real game changer for some of us. Is okay, are we ready for
Oh,
those
yeah.
times? And can you manage the stress? Can you keep yourself in motion, or do you have a strategy to keep the business going without you? So
Yeah. And it's also understanding priorities. At that time, I didn't have assistants. I didn't
yeah,
have anybody. I had a nanny, but
right.
that's about it. And my mom always says, be the CEO of your life.
I love
And
that.
I love it too. And it's a hard thing to do, especially as somebody who's a bit controlling.
What?
But the things that lead to our success are also some of those roadblocks to our success.
Hmm.
So it's really always a constant evolution of finding that balance.
Yeah, well said. I love that advice, and I'm wondering, I think sometimes in tough moments, or when we're kind of in the business for a while and we need to re-up our inspiration, a lot of us turn to quotes or some kind
Yeah.
of a mantra that gets us through. Do you have one or two that really inspire you?
Well, one is the one I just shared with you from Tiffany. If
Hmm.
things are getting easier, you're going downhill. That
Okay.
that does help me when things are getting tough. And on the flip side, on the more personal side, um, I don't remember who said this to me, but it's something that does help me. Good enough is good enough. And as some of us are perfectionists and meticulous in everything, and sometimes accepting that not everyone's going to love you.
Hmm.
And you might get one person in the room that gives you a poor rating, or you know you missed one event at the school. I cried the first time I missed my son's event, and he remembered.
Of course.
You think they won't remember? He remembered, and he reminds me. He goes, "No, you've missed two now, Mom." He's 8 years old. I've only missed two. That's not so bad. Um, but in my head, instead of feeling guilty over those things and beating myself up over the fact that maybe you got one person who wasn't happy with you, or missing one school event, good enough is good enough.
Yeah, well said. So let's talk a little bit more about the book for a second before
Sure.
we have to wrap up. I want to know a little bit more about the book and where we can find it and all that good stuff.
Great. Well, I always explain to people that the 11 laws of likability is not about getting people to like you, because we can't make people like us.
Hmm.
But what we can do is understand the drivers of likability and show people and enable people to see what is likable about us. And that's really what the book is about, is those drivers. And I talk about what we can do before, during, and after a conversation to enable others to see that in ourselves.
I like that. Where can we find the book?
I'm everywhere. I'm in actually 8 languages.
Oh, nice.
So I'm also in audio. We're on Barnes& and Noble. We're on every e-reader platform. Amazon is probably your cheapest source for the book.
Okay.
But I'm also at the AMA bookstore and probably your local bookstore. Every time I go, I look for it. Face it out.
Those are my next two on the bookshelf. So, what's next for Michelle?
Yeah, this is a great question. I have so many things brewing. Part of it is prioritization, another challenge. One of the things I'm thinking about is developing a mobile app
Mm.
that will coincide with some of the lessons of the book so that you can have kind of Michelleisms and Michelle coach, at your fingertips. We're also developing a more expanded 11 Laws program, similar to the Covey course.
Hmm.
Right now, we have a half day 11 Laws that takes you through half of them. So we're going to expand that to a full day, maybe even a 2 day program, and have, the 11 Laws for business development and the 11 Laws for sales and the 11 Laws for customer service and have different venues of that. I'm doing a lot more TV work these days. I still do a lot of radio, and if you need me, call me.
Just call me. Well, all right. So let's tell everybody where they can find you. What's your website?
My website is Michelle with two L's, Tillis, Tillis, Letterman, and it's not the same as David Letterman, Lederman.com. You can also, if you have any veterans in your life and they're trying to get back into the workforce, heroesgethired.com. That book is free. It is
Oh,
free
how
for all veterans.
cool.
So they can download it in any e-reader format. There's 20 videos on the website, and it is my way of giving service to those who have served. So that's a free resource for them. On my website, you'll find my LinkedIn, my Twitter, my Facebook. Don't friend me. Go to the professional page. My hair got real big in the 80s. It's not pretty. Uh, so
Didn't all of our hair get big in the
yes.
80s?
I was over 5 feet tall in the 80s with my hair. Uh,
Nice.
so it's Michelle Tillis Letterman, author and speaker on Facebook. On Twitter, it's MT Letterman. I have a YouTube channel. I have a blog. If you want me, you can find me. I promise you.
Just Google her.
Google me, you'll find me.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for being here. And I love the idea behind the book. I'm gonna have to get a copy for myself. I love the whole idea of really focusing on how we can communicate and strengthen those relationships. And even on the personal side, communication is my number one value in
Oh, yeah.
relationship. And I think it's just the thing that just creates extraordinary, beautiful, magical experiences in this world is when you really learn to have those deep, profound relationships in business and in life. So,
It
thank you
makes
for being
everything
an advocate.
it makes everything more fun.
It does, doesn't it? It makes life sweeter. Thanks, Michelle. And I would love to hear from you as you're listening in today with Michelle and I. Was there an insight or a tip or something that really struck you? If you're here on the blog, share it in the comments below. And if you're listening on iTunes, you can pop over to melaniebensonstrick.com and find us on the blog and come share some of your insights and tips. We'd love to have you. All right, everybody. See you next week.